Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another special Film Fanatic show. So, hope everyone's doing good. It is Friday at 11:02. Pretty normal, regular winter's day. So, yeah, hope everyone's doing good. First off, I just want to mention again, I've been promoting it a lot and trying to get some folks aware of it or interested in the show. Tonight at 7 o'clock, we're playing a quantum show with the Button Men at Hey Sailor. The show starts at 7. We go on at 7. Quantum leads off the festivities. And our friend Dan Miller, who is a great friend and really talented musician, he's going to be sitting in with us to play some percussion, which will be a first. So, yeah, if you're around, it should be a great time. It's going to be trying to bill it as a dance party, kind of more in the like 80s synth. Well, it's billed actually as a synth wave dance party, and so both bands, my band Quantum and the Button Men, are really inspired by all 80s dark wave synth wave music, but also house music and all kinds of other styles of music. But we're billing this whole show as more of a dance party, synth wave dance party. So come on out, should be a great time. We've played a couple times, played a couple of shows with the Button Men last year. Super fun. I love their music. It's wacky, it's fun, it's great, great 80s synth pop stuff. So yeah, come on by. Really excited about that. So today's a little bit of a different show. I'm going to be talking about a movie that it was my first time seeing it. It's an anime. It's an old school anime from 1984. And the main thing around this whole experience, it was a movie I saw in the theater last night, was the main thing that was the coolest thing was how we saw the movie and what the whole kind of event was about. So one of my closest friends, Erin Kirkpatrick, had a birthday party last night. She is turning 40, or today she is officially 40 years old. So, and I've been friends with her for quite a few years. I've always said that, one of my favorite things to do in my free time, in my downtime, is to go to the movies. I love the experience of going to the movies, even if the movie is kind of a clunker. I just love that whole experience, but especially if it's a really great experience, it's like no other. And so Aaron is a really good movie buddy. We've hung out many times. We've gone to see a shit ton of movies together. She's like one of my go-to friends when it comes to calling somebody up and being like, "Hey, you want to check this movie out?" We've seen all kinds of movies together. We've seen some really great movies. Probably the most fun and the most kind of exhilarating experience we ever had going to movies was going to see The Substance with Demi Moore, which I just found out last night, which I think is fucking insane and just fucking amazing, is that The Substance is up for Best Picture. We went into that super cold. I didn't know really anything about that movie, and we were just blown the fuck away. And that movie is pretty much the best movie of last year, but it's bonkers crazy, and I'm just amazed. Like every now and then, something slips in the Matrix, and I think this is an example of that. Everywhere and Everything All at Once was another movie that won a couple of years ago a bunch of Oscars, which is again a movie that is so unconventional and so bizarro and amazing. Uh, so that every now and then I feel like there's a glitch in the matrix where some real something really unique and beautiful and ultra creative kind of slips through the mainstream. And also another film, Parasite, by Hong Jung-po, won a few years ago for Best Picture, which was a foreign movie. So every now and then, shit like that happens. It's very rare, but it seems to be happening a little bit more. So anyway, she had this awesome. Erin had this awesome idea for her birthday, which I've never. It was a whole new experience for me. I never knew you could do it as a person. But what she did was she rented out a movie theater last night at Flagship Cinema in Thomaston, Maine, which is about 45 minutes or so from my house. She rented out the theater for her own birthday party and basically showed her favorite movie, and cake, popcorn, and soda, all that stuff was provided. And I was like, wow, like when I first heard about this idea and she first told me about it, I'm like, that is a awesome idea. I never knew you could do that. And I guess it's like 150, 200 bucks. You can rent out the theater and you can basically, take over the movie theater and have a party. And you can bring in whatever movie you want for that night. And I'm like, that's a pretty awesome idea. Um, so that's what we did last night. And the showings, because you're renting out the theater, and it was on last night was Thursday. The options that you have is basically you either do it like at 9 in the morning or 9 at night, which is kind of funny. And so she rented out the theater for a 9 o'clock showing, and she basically rented out the theater for 3 hours. We gathered in the lobby. Everybody kind of gathered in the lobby. There was probably about 10 or 12 people at about 10 to 9, and the whole event was pretty funny because a good crew of people showed up, and then we all congregated for a while. We got our popcorn and got our soda. And then we went into the theater that she rented out, and she put in the movie, or they started playing the movie, but there was no sound, and then the lights were not going off. So it was like, okay, not sure what's going on here. And then they had said something. The woman who was there, who was in charge of showing the movie, that kind of the projectionist, said that there was some kind of glitch with the system, so they had to restart it. And basically, Erin brought in her own copy, Blu-ray version of this film, which I'm going to talk about, and which is the main thing of the show because I had never seen this movie and I was kind of blown away by it. So they tried again. They stopped the movie and then started it again, and then the same thing happened about 2 or 3 times. And finally, the movie just kept playing, and then there was no sound, and the lights were still on, and nothing was happening. So I was like, what the heck's going on here? And then finally, and the party was in one of the smaller theaters, but it was perfect for like a group of like 12 people. And a few of the people that showed up are, kind of loud and obnoxious, so they were kind of like talking loud and like yelling at the screen. It was pretty funny. So after this went on for about 10 minutes or so, the woman who was in charge of showing the movie, basically pressing play of the Blu-ray, came down and said, well, for some reason, this disc is not taking to the system. They can't play it. So what they decided to do was move us into another theater and then have it there. And then so they moved us to another theater, which actually was awesome because they moved the whole party into the biggest theater in the at Flagship, which is actually a really nice theater, and it's the biggest theater. It has the best sound. And so there was a table with cake and balloons and all this stuff. So they moved everything into the other room, and then about, I don't know, once everybody was kind of situated in this bigger theater and this much better theater, and everybody got their seats. It was pretty funny too because it was such a big theater. Everybody spread out all over the place. So the movie played perfectly, and then it was great. It was actually really awesome, and and it just totally kicked ass. And everything kind of went without a glitch after that. And the movie was Beautiful Dreamer. It's a anime film from 1984. Aaron and I have a deep love for film, obviously. Like, there's a lot of movies we really, really love. and we've seen all kinds of different films in the theater. She's not one thing we're a little bit different on as far as our taste. Like she's not so much into horror films as much as I am. But then again, she loved the substance, and we actually saw Nosferatu together, and both of those films are as horrific as you can possibly get. So I don't really think that's really true. But she loves comedies. She loves all kinds of genres, action movies. She's really her big thing of the genre that she's really into is anime, and I am also I'm very much into a lot of anime. I really got I always like growing up. I always liked anime, but it wasn't until college where I got turned on to some really great classic anime, and then I became a huge fan. The movies that I really started to pay attention to were like Ghost in the Shell, Akira, of course. There was a Japanese series, which is probably my favorite anime series called Berserker, which is all of these movies are like wicked old school from the 80s. And then Appleseed is another one. Metropolis, the anime version. There's so many. Vampire Hunter D, Spirited Away, of course. There's a shit ton of old school horror anime too that I love. But those are the movies that really got me into anime. But honestly, like the last 5 years or so, anime is obviously just exploded beyond belief. Like now it's at that time, like when I was in college and I really started getting into anime, it was fairly like underground. It wasn't really embraced by everyone like it is now. And now where you have a lot of the old school anime was all based on manga, which is the Japanese comic book company, and a lot of these animated anime movies came out of that. And but now, like at that time when I got into it, it was I don't know, it almost had like a cult status. Like obviously people in Japan were raised on anime were really into it, and then you had the hardcore people in around the world that were really into it. But a lot of folks, like the mainstream folks, really weren't really aware of what anime was, and it wasn't really popular in kind of the commercial spectrum so much. But since then, and this is going back quite a few years, it exploded, and you have a lot of American companies also, you know, collaborating with Japanese illustrators and Japanese companies that have, really the whole thing has just exploded. So now you have a bazillion movies, all kinds of series, and the those classic films now are bigger than ever, and so it's become, and then you have whole generations of kids now, American kids that were raised on anime because of this explosion, like the timing. So, and Erin is like part of that generation. I'm about 10 years older than her, so it's about that kind of that precipice. So, and it's interesting too because I didn't grow up with anime. I mean, I grew up with I don't. It's not anime, but it was definitely inspired by anime. But I grew up like watching animated cartoons like Voltron, the Transformers, GoBots, and Speed Racer. These were all like American, more or less American knockoffs. Some of them were Japanese, but they were more, for the most part, commercialized. So American versions of anime-inspired cartoons. But it wasn't until college that I got into, kind of more authentic, real deal anime. But with Erin, that's really her big thing. Like she is really, really into. Probably would be. It's probably safe to say that that's probably her biggest and deepest love when it comes to cinema and media. And with Erin and our like little group of friends that were there, they stay up much more than I do on new anime. I like a lot of newer anime, like anime that's come out, say, in the last 5 or 10 years. There was, but I don't stay up on it like those guys do. I'm a little bit more out of the loop. I traditionally go back to the older stuff, but every now and then I do see some new stuff, and I do really like it. But they're more steeped in the all. I mean, again, there's been just within the last 5 or 10 years, there's been a bazillion new anime movies and all kinds of television shows and series. But I was, kind of, I'm kind of a little bit on on the outskirts of that. There was a time like about a year or two ago where I was really like had a real big thirst to really catch up on a lot of newer anime that had been coming out, and I, had seen a whole bunch of newer anime about probably about 2 years ago or so. And in all honesty, I think with technology and the science of the actual like the technical side of anime, the illustration, all of those things. There's been so many amazing advances, and just like the technology is incredible, and a lot of these newer films that I've seen, like the newer ones, I really thought were really great, but I felt like, I don't know, it felt like a lot of the newer ones were just not as dark or as deep or as violent as other ones that I grew up watching. I like the anime. I like the action driven ones. I like the anime films where it gets you thinking. A lot of the anime stuff is so like when I think of the anime, culture of Japan at Magna, and then we think of uh, the American culture, like the culture that I grew up when what we view as cartoons and the Japanese, mindset. Typically American cartoons, if you will, kind of don't really like as far as depth and subject matter. They're pretty light and they're kind of silly. And they don't really take a deep dive into like you know to a degree like human psychology, and like asking some deep and dark questions about humanity and technology, and whereas Japanese anime really has this takes a deep dive. Like some of the storylines are just really seismic and really intense, and the violence, the subject matter. They can be really serious, and they take this deep probing kind of dive into all kinds of subject matters, and they're heavy. And so like kids in Japan growing up, or just American kids that were hip to anime, the comparison, there is no comparison between watching American Saturday night cartoons to like what kids in Japan were growing up listening to or watching. It's a whole different world. And I felt like with a lot of the newer anime I was seeing, it just wasn't as far reaching as some of those classic anime movies that I mentioned. It's still really good and still poignant, and still a lot of them did kind of take those, did you know ask those kind of deeper, kind of humanistic questions. But a lot of them felt a little bit more, I guess. I kind of almost hate using the word, but a little bit more family friendly to a degree. So I don't know. But anyway, that being said, I still think that there are some newer ones that are great. But I was really excited because I had not seen um, Beautiful Dreamer, and when I saw that this is like a wicked old school anime, I was like, yes, this film came out in 1984, and we watched it on the big screen at Flagship. It was a Blu-ray, and the transfer was really great. It actually looked really great. You can tell. I mean, um, you can tell that it was a Blu-ray and it's not quite formatted for the big screen. And again, this is just my nitpicky brain, but you can kind of tell that I don't know, it's not as sharp. I don't know. I don't think that that system or systems are really made per se to watch on that kind of system. I don't think that they are. I think the pixelation and the clarity isn't quite lined up with it compared to say if you saw the maybe 4K would be. I've seen some films where they are 4K or really high end resolution Blu-rays and they look really great, or of course film, which is very rare. But so there's a little bit of an issue around the transfer, but it still looked amazing. The sound was great. They had the sound cranking, and the sound was awesome. It was pretty loud, and it was great. And again, this was my first time seeing this film. It was directed by Mori Oshii, and again, it came out during the primetime heyday of classic anime in 1984. And this movie is it's kind of fucking wild. Like it's about an hour. It's an hour and 41 minutes, and the storyline is it's just wild. Like it's basically centered on this alien teen and her human pals as they go through life, but they keep living through the same nightmares in which all normal functions, or at least what they perceive to be reality, are kind of, you know, overturned. So the whole movie is really about this group of kids, and one of their friends is an alien from another planet, and it deals with questioning, reality and consciousness, and to a degree, does are we really experiencing anything that is real? Is and this sense of not really knowing what consciousness is or what reality is. It really dives into that, and it also dives pretty heavily into the idea of what dreams are about. And it's really it's a beautiful movie. It's definitely super fantasy based. Definitely has a sci-fi vibe. It's very surreal. It gets pretty bonkers crazy as far as the whole notion. Like it does take a deep dive in about questioning reality and what consciousness is, and what the dream state versus our working state, or walking state. And and it's really also really it takes a deep dive into just questioning what our society is, and these given roles that were given by the powers that be. It's pretty extraordinary. It's Aaron had said too that this she was showing this movie because this is her all-time favorite movie and her all-time favorite anime movie. So going into it, I was like, I'm excited to check this out, and I figured it's going to be good. And it was great. It was awesome. And yeah, super surreal, super trippy. The animation is amazing. Just incredible. It's hard to believe that this came out in 1984. The subject matter was great. I mean, it really tackles a lot of kind of serious, heavy subjects. Along with questioning what reality is and dreams. It's got some beautiful action sequences. The animation, the music is just incredible. The script is just amazing. The one other thing that I thought was a little bit, and again, this is just me because I'm kind of a snob, I guess, but of course, this is a Japanese film, and we watched it when they were pressing. You could see the screen, the menu, when they press play to show the movie. They picked the American dubbed version, And for me, I really want to see the original Japanese version. In my own, in my own world, my own habits, whenever I have a film that is technically a foreign film, I always will, if I have that option, whatever movie it is, and especially anime, whenever I have that opportunity to watch the film in its native language, I watch a shit ton of foreign films, and I watch a shit ton. I do own quite a few anime
Halloween
movies.
off.
I and if I have the option to watch the film in its original language, I will watch it with English subtitles. So I'm really curious. I really want to see it. We watched the American dubbed version, which a lot of people love the American when well, when it comes to a lot of slasher films, a lot of people love watching it with the dubbed version because it just adds an extra layer of campiness and silliness to the movie. And I get that, and I totally understand that because, that was how, I was raised. Like any Fulci movies I saw or whatever, everything was dubbed. Any foreign film was dubbed. Back in that time, there was no option, and even anime too. There was no option to watch a movie in its original language. But I find now, since I've gotten into film, big time, I find now like when I get when I get a Blu-ray of a movie that's a foreign movie, and I believe it's just all around, but and I have the option to watch it in its whatever, if it's a Spanish film or Japanese film, whatever it is, Korean film. If there's a an option to watch the film in its native language, I will always watch the movie in that native language because I feel like overall, for me, with foreign films, and I think the same for me totally applies to Japanese films, to anime. I feel like the translation is off. The storyline is not really the same, and you do miss key points in the story because of the translation. The translation being off. So that's why I typically will always do that if that's an option. The way I discovered that, or at least for me, how it became a thing was way back many years ago. I saw, which is an amazing film. I don't think I've ever done a show on it, but I should and I will at some point. One of the greatest martial arts films that's ever come out, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, directed by Ang Lee, which is a masterpiece. I remember seeing that movie. I do own it on DVD. That would be an amazing edition on Blu-ray. But I remember, and that film is it's all shot in Mandarin. It's by an American director, but it's all shot in Chinese and with English subtitles. But I remember seeing a version of it where it was a dubbed version, and it was an American version, all dubbed with American actors, and there was no subtitles. And I think that was one of the first ways I saw that movie. And I thought it was still amazing, and that film's a masterpiece. But then when I bought it or rented it on DVD, I saw that there was an option to watch it in Mandarin. And I remember, oh, okay, I want to check that out. And I watched it, and I was like, wait, the story is. I felt like the story was way more cohesive and made more sense. And there were certain things like the translation was off, and so you were missing some key ingredients in the story. And I was like, oh, wow, it's and for me it was a world of difference, and it made the experience so much more enjoyable. So ever since that time, and this was going back quite a few years, ever since that time, when it comes to any foreign film, if I have it on disc, Blu-ray, or DVD, I will always go that route of watching it in its native language because of that. So with this film that we watched last night, Beautiful Dreamer, we watched the American version, and it was still amazing and fantastic. But I really, really want to see it in its native language. And it was interesting because I was asking Aaron about it, about why they chose that version, and she's like, "Well, I was raised that way, and that was how I saw the film. That's how I was accustomed to seeing the film, and I don't think she's ever seen it in its Japanese language. So in the original native language. So and a couple of the other folks there said the same thing. And but I, if it was up to me, I would totally go with the original Japanese version. But that's just me. But amazing film, beautiful film. I really, really want to see this again. It was my first time seeing it, and I love that this came out in 1984. Again, super trippy movie, super surrealistic, um, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's got the music is incredible. It's got some light and silly segments or parts, and then it gets really serious and it gets pretty dark and pretty kind of bananas. I love this film. I thought it was amazing. I could see why Erin said that this is probably her favorite anime film. So I really want to see this again, and I really want to see it in its Japanese uh, uncut version. So thanks again. Thanks to Erin for showing this incredible movie. And yeah, we will see you next time. Peace.